First, could you tell us who are you and something about yourself and your relation to Orisha?
Thank you so much. My name is Kola Abimbola. I am first and foremost a babaláwo. I'm also a lecturer in law. I teach at the University of Leicester. And quite a lot of what I do has to do with philosophy, religion, and law.
Okay. How do you view the Orisha worship as it spreads throughout various areas of the world?
I think my views on that are a little bit biased. I think I view it as a very good thing for various reasons. The first main one being that Orisha religion is a religion like no other religion in many ways. The best way to think about this is to approach this by contrasting Orisha religion with other religions of the world. As with many other religions of the world, Orisha religion does not discriminate on the basis of race, gender, or color. But Orisha religion is one of those few religions that have taken the idea of equality and egalitarianism to its most logical conclusion. And what I mean by that is this. It's a religion that also does not discriminate on the basis of religion. A very clear-cut illustration of this is that in the sacred text of Orisha religion, which is known as the Ifa literary corpus, one of the chapters or books of this sacred text, these books are called Odu Ifa. The 13th chapter of Odu Ifa, known as Otura Meji, has various poems which deal with the sort of concrete positive advice you can give to someone who wants to join another religion. And these are, we do not deride other religions, we only require one thing. Anyone who governs her or his life, or its life, because we also pay a lot of attention to other entities other than human, on the basis of moral character, that's good enough. Moral character for us is the essence of religion.
Do you believe that the Orisha worship can be considered a multinational, multicultural, and multiracial religion?
Well, yes, it could be, except that I will probably invert the logic of that. It's in a way overlooks the differences between culture. Because sometimes multiculturalism could simply be just respect without a deep sense of honor and a deep sense of equality being involved. So it's not multiculturalism in that sense. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think that the Orisha worship is ready to become a known world religion as the other known Western world religions?
Very good question. In a way, there are various layers to that question. A straightforward answer to that might presume that it is not already known, okay, which I do not accept. But on a different level, there is no doubt that the way Orisha religion has been practiced for many years makes it a religion which has thrived and survived better underground for various reasons, one of which has to do with historical reasons of slavery and the reason why the religion survived in many parts of the so-called new in quote world. So people were accustomed and used to practicing the religion in secret because that was how it survived. And as a result of that, there's some carryover from that in contemporary times in the New World. And in Africa, because Western education was introduced into Africa by Christian missionaries, most of the elites in many parts of Nigeria, Benin Republic, Togo, and Ghana, where Yoruba or Orisha religion is practiced, were initially Christians, up till about 30, 40 years ago, you can count the number of elites or academicians or educated people who will openly admit that they are practitioners of traditional religions. But things are changing. There are very many people like me who go around the world. You ask me what I am. First and foremost, I'm a babaláwo. Actually, I've never wanted to be anything else. So as a result of that, I think the atmosphere has changed radically. And it is already a world religion for the very simple reason that if you look at numbers, we have close to maybe 100 million practitioners of this religion around the world in places like all the African countries I've mentioned, Brazil, Trinidad and Tobago, actually all the Caribbean islands, most of the South American countries, USA, Canada, China, Japan, and Australia. So it's a world religion. The only thing we need to do now is to, and this is one of the main reasons why we're having this Congress here in Brazil, is to find a sort of, the Congress itself is an umbrella organization that brings together all various facets of the religion. So we need to emphasize more the reach and spread of this religion such that practitioners in all these parts of the world come together so that people will recognize that we are really a force to be reckoned with.
Como é que isso poderia ser feito na prática, né? Para além do Congresso? Né?
What do you think, what are the practical things we can do after the conferences, in between the conferences? What other things can we do besides the conferences?
Very good. I think this is really at the forefront. It's so crucial because one of the most radical differences between, one of the main radical differences between Orisha religion and other religions is that Orisha religion is what I call a practice-based religion. It's not just about faith. It's about how you make use of concepts of morality implicit in the religion to change the day-to-day life and practices of people. And quite a lot of people are already doing that. I'll give you one good example. Here in Brazil, for example, there are some Yalorishas and Babalorishas who do a lot of good work with Orisha religion and prisoners' rights. As with most countries in the so-called Western parts of the world, there is an alarmingly high rate or percentage of minorities people in prison. So there is one Umbandan Terreiro, for example, called Casa de Pedão, who does a lot of work with prisoners' rights and visit people who are prisoners in prison. And religion is being used as a forum or as a basis for furthering the rights of prisoners. That's one good example. Some also deal with things like adult education. There are Terreiros here in Brazil who teach people how to read and write. So those are the kind of practical things we do.
E há necessidade de algum nível de institucionalização maior para fazer esse tipo de coisa?
Do you think the Orisha religion needs now a more institutionalized organization, so we will be able to do this all in common?
It's a difficult thing that's a very difficult question to answer because I think there are benefits and disadvantages with institutionalization. Obviously, institutionalization is one of the simplest and clearest way of galvanizing all the forces of the religion under one umbrella. But it has its disadvantages. First of all, we need to realize that in many parts of the world where this religion is practiced, the religion has for a long while been practiced underground because people were persecuted, people were repressed, and it's difficult to get over the psychologistic dimension of practicing the religion in public, in private. So people will always be a little bit coy about institutions. That's one dimension to it. Another dimension to it is that it has to do with the philosophy or theology of the religion. And this goes back to one of the things I mentioned earlier about the radical differences between this religion and other religions. The way I approach this is that it's a very complex religion in which we have many supernatural powers. But amongst this diversity or pluralism or highly populated world, we have 400 plus 1 orishas, for example, and 200 plus 1 evil supernatural forces. And note that I said plus 1, I did not say 201, because that 1 refers to a set into which we put all newly created entities. Given this diversity, one of the things that has made this religion survive is precisely the point that the religion has a set of beliefs, a set of practices that are at the hardcore, at the center of the religion. And any practice which subscribes to these hardcore practices will be classified as Yoruba culture or Orisha culture, religion, or tradition, of which we have Orisha religion or Yoruba religion in Nigeria. We have Fondon in Benin Republic, not Fondon in Haiti. Fondon in Benin Republic. We have Candomblé here in Brazil. There are various dimensions of Candomblé. You have Angola, you have Nago, and you have Batuki. And you also have religions like Umbanda that borrows from various practices. Now, the significance of this is that we have the hardcore principles, and we have principles that are at the periphery. And if we try to institutionalize, it might create problems in terms of what sort of things do you institutionalize. It's easy to say that we can institutionalize the hardcore principles, but those might not be enough. One of the things many religions do when they become institutionalized is that they could lay conditions on various ritual practices. But I do not honestly think that that's the best way forward for Orisha religion.
Como é que está a fita aí? Consegue quais os maiores problemas que ele vê nesse processo de globalização?
What are the biggest problems you see in this globalization process?
Oh, there are quite a few problems, I think. One of the most crucial problems is still the fact that in many parts of the world, practitioners of this religion are looked down upon, sometimes derided, even in Nigeria. I was recently in Nigeria just before the Congress, and I was invited to a celebration of the achievements and life of Susan Wenger, who is one of the most important Oshun priestesses of all times. And at the Austrian ambassador's residence where this event was holding, I sat at a table with someone. He asked me who I was. I said, well, I'm a babaláwo. He looked at me as if he could pray that the ground could open up and transport him to somewhere else. He would have liked that. But after a while, we got talking, and he found it a little bit courageous that someone could admit that that's what he or she is. But, so effectively, what I'm saying is this. The biggest challenge for us is really the challenge of the mind. It's how people conceive of this religion. And to a large extent, a lot of this has to do with us practitioners of the religion. And this is one of the reasons why this Congress is important. We need to let people, to demystify people's minds. There's a lot of error about being bantered around about this religion. And unfortunately, rectifying false impressions are some of the most difficult things to do. Because even when you explain things to many people, oftentimes people will just go away and believe what they want to believe anyway. Yeah.
In your opinion, the orishas that you worship are the same orishas worshipped outside of your country or abroad?
Very good question. The answer to that is yes and no. I'll explain why. I mentioned earlier that there are 400 plus 1 orishas. Okay. the 400 there refers to the primordial orishas that have been in existence before the creation of the natural world. The one refers to a set in which we put all newly deified entities after the creation of the world. So obviously, perhaps with the remarkable exception of Ile-Ife, in most parts of the world, people do not worship all the 400 primordial entities. In Ile-Ife, they still worship virtually all the 400 primordial ones. So if you go to, go to Maranhão, a city in Maranhão, Brazil, maybe they worship 10 there. If you go to Havana, maybe people worship a different set of 10. So they know there refers to the fact that people could worship not the same number of these 400 primordial ones. But also, there is a +1 set. The newly deified entities in various parts of the world are not necessarily the same. So from that point of view, people could worship slightly different things. So for example, here in Brazil, you have an Angolan candomblé, you have the caboclo, which has been integrated into the practice of candomblé, you also have the caboclos in Umbanda. In Nigeria, we do not have the caboclo. What we have are ancestors. They also have ancestors there, but they function slightly differently. But the crucial thing is that the logic which governs the creation of new entities, which governs the addition of new entities into the +1 set, follows the same logic of the religion anyway. So it's still the same religion, but slightly different practices.
Agora, em relação a, por exemplo, a globalização, muita coisa vem de fora. No caso do Brasil, nós, por exemplo, não tivemos o desenvolvimento do culto de Ifá. Com essa globalização, esse processo globalizante, o culto de Ifá chega até nós por várias vias. Né? E isso, naturalmente, causa um choque com a estrutura local. O que ele acha disso?
In this process of globalization, different things has happened, and specifically here in Brazil, where the Ifá cult had almost died off actually, and then it came again through different ways, Cuba and Africa, and obviously there was a shock with the hierarchy of Candomblé. How do you view that process in itself?
Como se pode lidar com isso?
How can we deal with that in the diaspora?
Well, there are various ways of dealing with this. The first thing to point out is that actually there are what we call Ifá. There are two closely related systems. It was one of them that died off, the other did not. Okay, because Ifá, there's the extensive Ifá divination, which has 256 Odu, each of the Odu having about 800 poems. But there's also what we call Enidilogun, or 16 cowries, which is called Jogo de Buizos here in Brazil, which did not die off. But even when 16 cowries did not die off, quite a lot of those who divine with 16 cowries lost the literature of 16 cowries, even though the practice of divining with 16 cowries never died off. But in recent years, there has been many we have many babalawos and Yanifa here in Brazil who either went to Cuba or Africa to be initiated and to learn, and then come back to Brazil to practice. Now, how that affects the hierarchy or the relationship with other parts of the religion, I don't see why that is a problem. For the very simple reason that Ifá, whether we like it or not, you cannot have a religion without a sacred text. Ifá is one of the most important dimensions of Yoruba culture and religion around the world. In fact, in my own opinion, you cannot have what you refer to as Yoruba culture or Orisha religion and culture without Ifá. For one very simple reason. Definitions are difficult, but if you want to explain what a religion is, we can identify 4 key elements of any religion. You have icons. This is an icon of Yoruba religion, of Ifa. You have the cross, which is an icon of Christianity. You have rituals, which is the second main element. You can't have a religion without a specific set of rituals that distinguishes that religion from other religions. And you have a sacred text. Any religion, even if it's a brand new religion created yesterday, will have the beginnings of the creation of a sacred text, because they need a body of knowledge which explains the rituals and the meanings of that, and the rituals and the icons of that text. Without the sacred text, whether written or oral, you cannot have a religion. And it is from this sacred text that you take out, or it's by approaching and reading this sacred text that you understand the philosophy and the theology of any religion. So what we had in Brazil for a long while was a situation where they had the icons, they had the rituals, and because the sacred text was oral, Ifa, it had dwindled and was practically lost, the extensive Ifa system, but the interpretations of some people remained as myths and as various stories in the minds of many people, and it was carried over from year to year. But of course, an interpretation is a substitute, which is never as good as the original. Imagine a situation where you have interpretations of various parts of the Bible, but no one has the original text to cross-check this interpretation with. So it's for this reason that very many babalawos, very many people who traveled out of Brazil to Africa, to Cuba, and indeed many babalawos and yanifas from Africa and Cuba who came to Brazil, realized that here is a country which we can effectively regard as the home of the religion. In terms of numbers, there is no country anywhere in the world that has any higher number of practitioners than Brazil. The number of practitioners we have in Brazil far surpasses what we have in Nigeria. You cannot have a religion without the text. So many people are now reintroducing, or I should say have reintroduced, Ifa into Brazil. Whether that creates difficulties with the hierarchy, especially in relation to candomblé, is an aside which I think is not that important for one very simple reason. Ifa, this text, this is why it's important, tells us that the essence of religion for us is character, iwalesi. Good or moral character is the essence of religion. And this principle is encapsulated in Ifa as under the rubric of a family of related principles, actually, which we call iwapele, which includes things like inorere, having a good mind towards others. It includes iteriba, respect for elders. So even though I'm a babalawo, I've been studying Ifa for about 35 years. When I see someone who is an elder, even if that person is not a babalawo, I'm still that young boy who was learning Ifa many years ago. So it shouldn't affect the hierarchy in terms of how you respect elders and respect people who have more knowledge in other parts of the religion. But of course, as we see in one of the things Ifa reminds us is that respect cuts both ways. A child should respect an elder should also respect a child. So it goes both ways.
Mas ao mesmo tempo, a presença do babaláwo em si, na estrutura do candomblé, ameaça uma divisão de trabalho, inclusive financeira. Como é que ele vê esse aspecto?
The introduction of the babaláwo in the structure of candomblé is a threat to the, actually even a financial threat to the terreiro, because there is already a diviner there who's always the head of the terreiro, the Yalorisha or the Babalorisha, who divines with Mary Home. So if you introduce another diviner, you're going to have, conflict.
Really? That's based on a weird logic. I'll tell you why. Ifa tells us why. Ifa, in ancient times and until recently actually, operated in a setting where typically in Nigeria and most parts of Africa, babalawos do not divine alone. Babalawo divined as a group. And indeed, the beginning of every Ifa poem, most Ifa poems could have up to 6, 7, sometimes 10 babalawos who divined as a group. And you know what they do? Ifa is really a body of knowledge with various sub-disciplines. They have babalawos who will specialize in chanting. If they start chanting Ifa, you will want to start dancing even without any music. You have babalawos who specialize in history. You have babalawos who specialize in philosophy. You also have those who specialize in medicine. They will all combine together. So how can having more be a problem? The simple thing, I think, is precisely the point that perhaps people are human after all. And in many situations, you might have individuals who put their vanity or the pedestal on which they place themselves or which others have placed themselves at the top. But it shouldn't be, it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. As you believe, it should just be another role within a community.
It's already a community.
So
how can anything that will strengthen the community be a bad thing?
Okay. How did this exchange with priests of other countries and traditions change your concepts or religious practices?
It's very difficult to say, largely because my conception of the religion has always, right from the inception, been molded by the recognition of the fact that there are different perspectives and different dimensions to the religion. I was born in Lagos, but grew up in Ile-Ife. And Ile-Ife, as we know, is the center and heart of Yoruba religion and culture. So right from almost birth, I had been exposed to very many people from different parts of the world who are practitioners of the religion. But perhaps the more direct answer to your question will be this. My own conception of the religion is to a large extent radically different from that of very many other people. There are some people in various parts of the world, Nigeria, Brazil, Cuba, and the USA, who believe that their own way of practicing the religion is the only right way. But I approach these issues like this from a slightly philosophical point of view, largely because of the fact that my own main interest is in the theology and philosophy of the religion. And when I look at the practice of the religion all over the world, what I see is this. We can identify a hardcore of fundamental beliefs and practices that unite all different dimensions of the religion. This will include things like the belief in Olodumare and the fact that Olodumare for us is a spiritual entity which cannot be represented in any human form. Okay, there is this, that's one main pillar of the religion. Another main pillar of the religion is the belief that moral character is really at the hardcore. It doesn't matter of religious practice. So ultimately for us, it's not so much what you claim or proclaim to believe in that matters. It's really the content of your character, what you do, that matters. And thirdly, the religion has a rather dynamic and sophisticated, I would say that of course, biased, but a sophisticated approach to the way in which we consider people who belong to the religion. The way I describe it is this. There are 3 modes of entry into the religion. One is by birth, secondly is by choice, and third is by prescription. And what I mean by those are this. if you belong to a family or house in which a particular religion is already prominent, a particular practice of the Orisha is already prominent, you almost inherit that practice. So for example, our own family, Ogun and Ifa, are very, very prominent, and Shango. And all of our children and everyone, we practice those three main gods are the focal point of our practice. In the New World in quotes, the primary mode of entry for most people is by prescription. They go to a diviner or a babalorisha and a nigeriano who determines the orisha that claims their head, and it's on the basis of this that they become initiated into the society of any particular orisha. And the third mode is by choice. There are very many people who are fascinated by a particular orisha. They go along that path and become initiated into it. Now, the crucial point for me, therefore, is this. My own perspective of the religion has always been diverse. But I recognize that amidst that diversity, there is a hardcore of beliefs which unite the religion. So, or perhaps a not so long-winded way of replying that same question is this. Any religion of the world grows by having various denominations. The original home of this religion is the Yoruba parts of West Africa. And as a result of various accidents of history, or perhaps it was designed, who knows what the Orisha had in mind, but as a result of various accidents or design, whichever option you want to choose, we now have various denominations of the religion, which include Candomblé, and of course, Candomblé itself has various sub-denominations. We have Angola Candomblé, Nagu Candomblé. We have Batuki, we have Lukume, we have Santeria, and we have some denominations that are on the fringes, in the sense that they have significant elements of Yoruba religion and elements of other religions. This will include Umbanda. And indeed, we have some other denominations in quotes that are perhaps better regarded as new religions, Haitian voodoo, for example. Yeah. So that's how I've always approached the religion.
As part of a culture that's based on oral tradition, do you think the Orisha worship needs a literary written corpus? And, do we need a book?
The answer to that is mixed. Well, do what philosophers do, yes and no. Okay. The yes is this. Ifa is the kernel of the religion. Ifa has 256 books or Odu, with about 800 poems in each of those 256 Odu. And ideally, we need to compile all of these poems before they disappear, in the sense that there are many old people, babalawos and Iyanifa, who die out, and if no one learns some particular poems from them, we've lost those poems. Indeed, I strongly think that even if we now start collecting all the poems we can from all babalawos and Iyanifas in existence, we will not be able to compile all the 800 from each Odu anymore. Some are already lost. So from that point of view, I think it's important to document and compile this Odu, the Ifa literary corpus. And indeed, this work has been ongoing for many years. Very many people have compiled, collected many Ifa poems. But what we need is a concerted effort to put everything together into a set of volumes. Okay. So that's very crucial. But the danger, which we need to be careful of, is this. Part of the reason why this religion is so dynamic is precisely the point that each Ifa poem has 8 parts, 4 of which are compulsory, 4 of which are optional. Each compulsory, for the compulsory parts, wherever you go in the world, if you know a babalawo, if a babalawo knows one particular poem, he'll chant the compulsory parts in Yoruba word for word. If you go to Nigeria, if you go to Cuba, anyone who knows that the same poem will chant the compulsory parts word for word. The optional parts can be rendered in various ways. They are optional in the sense that the babaláwo could skip them, he can chant them, he can narrate them as poems. Now, the danger with writing things down is that if we are not careful, the dynamics and the richness of the orality might be lost. You can't have a babaláwo who will have to start consulting a book before. If I go to a babaláwo and he has to look at a book before he does anything, I'll just get up and leave. Because it's not a religion like Christianity where you read verses from books and that's it. There is a lot of dynamism which has to be engendered in the divination process itself. And once you start looking at books to do that, it breaks the synergy of the situation. So yes to compiling the Ifa poems, but we have to be careful to ensure that these written down versions of it are not regarded as absolute truth, that are sacrosanct and not open to various interpretations.
No. What do you think is the importance of recuperating the Yoruba language to the practitioners in the diaspora? You think it is possible? No. Yoruba as colloquial language, so we could talk.
Yes. I was smiling earlier on when you were posing the question because there are two questions there, really. It's a loaded question of some sorts because actually the Yoruba language has not disappeared. Okay, but what you have in most parts of the world outside of Africa is a situation where it has become a religious language. So we need to distinguish between the language as a religious language and the language as a colloquial language, as a spoken language. The language as a religious language will never die out. Okay, I've traveled to various parts of the world where this religion is practiced, when they start chanting, when they start singing songs to the Orisha. It might take me, depending on how radically different the language they speak colloquially is different from, say, Yoruba or English. It might take me 5 minutes or even a day to actually understand what they are saying. But I can guarantee you by the time I've spent a day or two with any group of Yoruba practitioners anywhere in the world, when they start singing their Orisha songs and start practicing, I will understand much of what they are saying. Indeed, I can translate quite a lot of the songs. They make perfect sense to me. Just give me 1 or 2 days. So the situation with the religious language is somewhat like what most people will encounter if you used to Queen's English and you are transported to Texas. Or you used to Texan English and you are taken to Sierra Leone where they speak a version of Pidgin English. Just give yourself 2 days and listen. You'll understand what they're saying. But having said that, I think that colloquial language will be of a great benefit. Here is a religion that has about 100 million practitioners around the world. Imagine a situation where all those practitioners are able to communicate in Yoruba. It will be rather very important. If you have a group of people that calls itself unique or that calls itself a group, there are 2 key things which I believe are important to any group: an identity. And the best way of forging your identity will be through 2 things: your religion and your language. We have the religion. We have the language as a religious language, but if it becomes a colloquial language, no one will mistake us for anything else. We will have our own identity, clear cut.
Para ele, como é que foi que a gente ontem entrevistou aquela moça americana que casou com um nigeriano e se tornou uma princesa. Ele é um nigeriano que foi morar na diáspora e cresceu na diáspora, cresceu no Ocidente, no primeiro mundo. Como é que é para ele esse choque? Como é que foi para ele resolver esse choque na vida dele, esse choque cultural?
Yesterday we interviewed Chief Adelakan's wife, who is a Westerner who is entering the African world. And we would like to know how was your life in the Western world, and was that a shock? Was there a shock in, living in the States, living in England, and what did it affect you?
That's a very difficult question to answer, for the very simple reason that my own perspective had earlier on been influenced by an international perspective. I think the very first time I traveled outside of Nigeria was probably maybe 14, 15. And since then, I've traveled to various parts of the world. So it wasn't so much of a shock. I recognize the fact that people are different all over the world. But I also recognize one thing. People are also fundamentally the same. In terms of people face similar types of concerns, similar types of pressures of day-to-day life. And all over the world, one of the things that I find particularly amazing is the fact that despite these so-called differences amongst people, if you go to anywhere in the world where you have practitioners of our religion, I'm at home. So my own perspective has always been international. About 4 weeks ago, I was interviewed by a radio station in England on preparation for this Congress. And at the end of the interview, they asked me, I'm a citizen of where? I said, well, that's a very easy question for me to answer. I'm simply a citizen of the world.
Se ele acha que as gerações mais antigas de Yorubás e as que estão hoje no processo de liderança da religião estão preparados para assumir o papel de liderança que o Adelakan disse que deveria ser feito, que eles precisariam assumir esse papel de liderança. Até que ponto os Yorubás estão preparados para assumir esse papel de liderança dessa religião que está se tornando mundial?
How do you think the Yoruba, the older Yorubas and the younger Yorubas are prepared or are ready to take upon the leadership of this religion that is becoming global and becoming worldwide? Are they prepared, or they understand what it entails?
Well, I think they do. All over the world. First of all, by the Yoruba, I presume you mean Yoruba people everywhere, all over the world.
No, I think we meant
Yoruba in Nigeria. Ah, okay. Well, those are not the only Yoruba people around the world. Okay, so for me, what makes one a Yoruba person is really about cultural identity. So you have very many people in Nigeria who call themselves Yoruba that I will not regard to be Yoruba. They just speak the language. And some don't actually, So my own view is this. The best way of answering that question is to go to some major cities in Nigeria. If you go to Oyo today, Oyo town in the southwestern parts of Nigeria, give me 10 minutes. I will find 30 youngsters ages 10 and below who can chant nothing less than 10 Ifa poems from the first 16 Odu. Any major city in Nigeria, just give me 10 minutes. All I need to do is to locate one elder babaláwo and we will get them for you. So it seems to me that that's a clear-cut indication of the preparedness of the youngsters for the responsibility of carrying on the tradition. And the funny thing is that one needs to realize the facts that this is a religion in which we do not proselytize. We do not force people to become part of our religion. Very many families are diverse in terms of religion. My wife is a Muslim. She's planning to go to Mecca next year. I will go with her. I won't do the pilgrimage, but when she's coming down for the mountain, I'll be one of those cheering, hey, welcome, Alaja. But my younger son decided 5 years ago he wants to be a babaláwo. It's up to him, it's my choice. So I think that's one of the key things we need to appreciate about this religion. It's attractive enough to capture people of all ages. The proof of the pudding, as they say, is in the eating.
Em relação à mídia, a maneira como a mídia tem lidado, tem se situado nesse processo globalizante, que aspectos ele vê de interessantes ou de negativos, né? Incluindo a internet nesse bolo, livros, todo o aspecto midiático da coisa.
In relation to the media as one of the global things that help this globalization, internet, films, books, what do you think are the negatives and the positive things that the media has been of late showing up about our?
Very good question. Their own prejudices. Oftentimes people are their own worst enemies. And I'll give you a very good example of how this could happen. In the year 2001 to 2002, I was a visiting assistant professor of religion at Temple University in Pennsylvania. And I received a telephone call from the Metropolitan Police in England. My research straddles 3 disciplines: philosophy, law, religion. And I also do some research on police culture, police thinking, and how you go about making sense of evidence. So they called me, just before, about a week before they called me, the torso of a young boy was discovered floating on the Thames, wrapped with a yellow kind of cloth, and they found various other things which I'm not supposed to talk about with the body. And one of the main theories the police were pandering then was that this was a sacrifice to Oshun. And they called me to find out whether I could help in making them figure out whether it really was. And I told them, from the description of what they gave to me, I told them that, well, first of all, Oshun is known as a protector of children. Many people go to Nigeria, Osun Osogbo, about 5 million every year, to venerate Osun. No one sacrifices children to Osun. Even if you wanted to, Osun will not accept it. And secondly, I pointed out to them that there is a need to distinguish between religious practices and evil practices that have nothing to do with religion. So, for example, in Christianity, there's a clear-cut difference between Christianity and those who are described as devil worshippers or satanic worshippers. So they might have taken their own idea of devil or Satan or Lucifer from the Bible, but when they worship that, we do not call them Christians. So by the same light, if you have someone who has taken his or her own idea of negative evil forces from the Yoruba conception of evil forces, and they now say they are worshiping the Aje or the Ajogun, which is a collective Yoruba name for them. They are not practitioners of Yoruba religion. And from what they described to me, what I told them was that it seems to me that what you should focus your attention on is to look at things to do with maybe children trafficking, or perhaps the child of an illegal immigrant of some sort who How do you bury a dead child in the Western world without someone knowing? It's not that easy. So what I told them was I might have something to do with some sort of illegal criminal activities that had nothing to do with religion. Well, what did the Metropolitan Police do? They were not satisfied with my suggestions. They went to South Africa, found an expert on occult religions who knew next to nothing about Yoruba religion to come and analyze the situation, and he told them that yes, it's got something to do with sacrifice to Yoruba deities, to Oshun, an oxymoron if there is anything like that, who will offer sacrifices of a child to Oshun. And the Metropolitan Police spent millions of pounds sterling. They went to Africa, they did DNA sampling for various cities in Nigeria, various parts of Nigeria, trying to see whether they could trace the family of this child. Lo and behold, what happens earlier on this year? They arrested a ring of children traffickers, which linked with people in Germany, France, and the UK. And the wife of one of them confessed that this was one of a child that was being brought to the UK illegally who died. But the press in England continued to report this as sacrifices to Yoruba religion until they caught the criminal gang. So people's own prejudices is the main problem. From our own part, as far as I'm concerned, to a large extent, the only onus of responsibility we have is to continue to explain the religion the way it should be. Our shrines, our practices are open to people. There might be some parts of it which are not open to those who are not initiated, but it's open to people of all race, of all color, of all gender. As you will see from this Congress, there are people of all colors of the world here and of all countries of the world. So the main problem is that of prejudice, I think.
Ele falou mais de como a mídia usa a religião e não como nós usamos a mídia para ajudar nesse processo. Como é que nós poderíamos...
And so how do you think we can use the media and all the media, books, television, internet, to counter this prejudice that there is against us?
Ajudar nesse processo de intercâmbio.
And also to help in this interchange between us.
I think this is one of the reasons why programs such as this are very important. Over the last 15, 20 years, we now have very many people in various disciplines, academicians, anthropologists, film producers, who are practitioners of the religion. And my own view is this. One of the best ways in which there are two basic approaches to studying any culture. There is what can be described as the outside-in approach, and what can be described as the inside-out approach. The outside-in approach requires someone who knows next to nothing of this religion to go and study this culture or religion and make use of his or her own background assumptions to try to understand the religion or the culture. Oftentimes when they do that, the main aim is to try to attain objectivity, in quote. But of course, the fact of the matter is that in cultural explanations, cultural interpretations, there really isn't anything as pure objectivity. Background beliefs, background assumptions, preconceived ideas will always affect how you interpret what you see. So my own preference is for what I call the inside-out approach. We need people who are in the religion, are in the culture, who are associated with it, or at least who understand it, to report more about what they see, to produce more films, to write more books. And indeed, the internet has proven to be a very great forum for popularizing this, because there are very many sites and very many discussion groups and avenues on the web for people to popularize the religion. So what I'm suggesting is this. We need more people who genuinely understand what the religion is about, to continue to write more about the religion, produce more films about the religion, and to popularize the religion. That doesn't mean we cannot be critical. It simply means that even if you want to be critical, you need to understand what it is you are criticizing.
Todo meu trabalho lá, que eu apresentei na conversa lá, da minha apresentação, foi no sentido de mostrar que o processo de globalização está ocorrendo de uma forma espontânea e muitas vezes isso leva a problemas, né? Como é que não estaria na hora de se assumir esse processo, uma visão, uma posição afirmativa de ocupação desses espaços na mídia e de todas as outras formas possíveis para evitar que esse processo de globalização fosse por caminhos desestruturantes e negativos para o crescimento da religião nessa forma mundial?
On the paper he presented, his main thing was the fact that this globalization is happening in a spontaneous way. And if you don't think that it's about time for us to actually take a proactive action in the sense of not letting this be just spontaneous or sometimes destructive in itself, but actually take a proactive behavior towards this globalization, towards this the process itself.
I think that's a very important question, actually. My own views on this are informed by one of the caps I put on, which is that of a philosopher. First of all, I think globalization is not a new thing. Okay. Right from the creation of the world has been expanding in terms of people meeting other parts of the other cultures, and so globalization is not a new thing. What we can say is that it's only in the last, say, 100 or so years that the significance and widespread of Yoruba religion and culture has begun to dawn on people. Okay. Now, what I think is that despite the fact that many religions approach their own practice by having a central body, I think that our own religion and culture thrives better when it doesn't have that central overarching controlling body. I'll explain what I mean. One way, if you take the model of Catholicism, for example, there's a clear-cut hierarchy that gives pronouncements about how a priest is ordained. Most religions' hierarchy involves things like that. So effectively, if we are thinking in terms of a structure like that, that will require us to put various structures in place such that we have just one clear-cut route about who initiates or who approves the consecration of one person or the other. I don't think that's necessarily good for us. What we need is perhaps the sort of thing we have with this International Congress, an organization that helps us to put various practitioners of the religion from around the world in contact with each other, that helps us to recognize the fact that we are a force in this world to be reckoned with, but at the same time doesn't make religious proclamations about how different denominations of the religion ought to practice or their own rituals. So it's in a way similar to what he is suggesting, but with a clear-cut recognition of the fact that we are not about making proclamations about how rituals, procedures ought to be followed.
Great answer. You have been in Brazil for a few weeks, and you have been with Brazilian people. There are many people in Brazil that rejects people that comes from abroad, like you, with another vision of our religion that is, in fact, your religion also. What would you like to say to Brazilian Candomblé practitioners. Thinking about that,
Resistance that there still is.
Well, you know what? I don't notice it for one very simple reason. I mean, I lived in America for about 3.5 years. I've lived in England for almost 16 years. Wherever I go, people keep saying that, well, yes, there's a lot of racism, there's this and that. As far as I'm concerned, that's their own problem. It will not, even in England, when I teach in the law school, dress like this to lecture rooms occasionally. If they don't like it, they can leave. You know, it was clear. When I was employed, it's clear call. I did not hide anything about what I am. It's part of what I am. So my own view is this. This is not the first time I'll be in Brazil, actually. The first time I came to Brazil was almost 22 years ago. And I've been here about 5 times. So I like to think that I know Brazil a little bit. And although I know for certain that there are people who are hostile and negative to people who come from abroad with, that's their own problem. I don't see them. I don't notice it. The worst they can do to me when I get to the Atehero, if there is something going on, say, no, we are not opening the door for you. I say, that's fine. I'll go to the next one down the road who will welcome me with open arms. That's their own problem. You know, that's the way I see it. You know, yeah.
You can say anything to Brazilians in general if you want.
Oh, I think,
The message.
yes, I think Brazil is a great place. In many ways, this religion is fortunate to have had Brazil, because I honestly think that without the accidents of history that brought very many people to Brazil, this religion will not be as grand and as big as it is today. So I salute the people of Brazil for the way in which they have upheld the practice of Yoruba religion, for their commitment to the religion, and for the fact that wherever you go in Brazil, people are proud of being in the religion. Yeah, that makes me very happy.